What's up, guys? We are looking at Eleanor Roosevelt's Pearl Harbor address. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it right here because once we get into the context, which they have in the article, we're going to find out a lot. So what you probably need to know, Eleanor Roosevelt is the first lady to FDR. She's married to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You guys read his Nothing to Fear But Fear Itself speech, his first inaugural in the Great Depression. But now we're into, what would this be, his third term? Basically Pearl Harbor, which is December 7th, 1941. And so we're reading her speech about it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get going. This speech given by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, this is obviously not her talking. The speech given by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the wake of December 7th, 1941, attack by the Japanese on Pearl Harbor, remains one of American history's most famous orations. That's where he says, "A day which will live in infamy." From his observation that the date would live in infamy to his request that Congress declare war, his words are, 75 years later, still associated with that moment in time. But the president was not the only Roosevelt to give a speech of sorts. In fact, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt addressed the American people before her husband did. Her weekly radio program, Over Our Coffee Cups, so she did this every week, was already scheduled to go out on that Sunday, and she kept up the schedule, adding a few words of commentary on the news to the introduction to the story she had planned. She became, according to the FDR library, so most presidents have their own presidential library, that's what this is, the first public figure who spoke to the country about what had happened. So that's really significant. She's the first one from the government to address the fact that the Japanese had committed a surprise attack on an American naval base in Hawaii. In her remarks on her broadcast, transcribed here, courtesy of the Eleanor Roosevelt Papers Project, she let the nation in on what was going on in Washington at that moment and spoke specifically to the women of America. So, if you were trying to keep track of who this is addressed to, you might be able to figure that out. Who might not have been on their way to battle, but were nevertheless deeply affected by the coming of war. All right, here's her words. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am speaking to you tonight at a very serious moment in our history. The cabinet," this is the presidential cabinet. This would be advisors to the president. I'm going to put FDR, so you know, "is convening and the leaders in Congress are meeting with the president. The State Department and Army and Navy officials have been with the president all afternoon." The State Department is the department of government that interacts with other countries. "And Army and Navy officials have been with the president all afternoon. In fact, the Japanese ambassador was talking to the president at the very time that Japan's airships were bombing our citizens in Hawaii and the Philippines and sinking one of our transports loaded with lumber on its way to Hawaii." I want you to think about that. The Japanese ambassador, their representative in D.C., was talking with FDR at the moment of the attack of Pearl Harbor. Put at moment. Pearl Harbor attack occurred. "By tomorrow morning, the members of Congress will have a full report and be ready for action." Okay, FDR's speech is the next day, the day which will live in infamy. This is the day of Pearl Harbor. She's telling us, hey, something's coming tomorrow. We know what's coming tomorrow. "In the meantime, we the people are already prepared for action. For months now, the knowledge that something of this kind might happen has been hanging over our heads, and yet it seemed impossible to believe. Impossible to drop the everyday things of life and feel that there was only one thing which was important: preparation to meet an enemy no matter where he struck. That is all over now, and there is no more uncertainty." So leading up to World War II, there was a lot of tension between America and Japan. America, and I wish I had the specifics of it right now, but basically they had embargoes on different products that couldn't be sold to Japan because Japan had been really aggressive in Southeast Asia and in East Asia. And so America had been punishing them economically. And so there was tension there. There also was the constant pull of being drawn into a fight in Europe. And so the military and everyone was already kind of preparing for possibly going to war, but there was uncertainty, like what Eleanor Roosevelt's saying here. What she's saying now is, hey, we don't have to wonder anymore whether we're going to war. We are going to war, right? And we know who our enemies are. We know what we have to face, and we know that we are ready to face it. I should like to say just a word to the women in the country tonight. I have a boy at sea on a destroyer. For all I know, he may be on his way to the Pacific. This really communicates how fresh everything is. The First Lady doesn't know what's going on with her son, right? Think about the panic that must have been associated with that time. 2 of my children are in coast cities on the Pacific. People didn't know if Japan was going to come for San Francisco next. Many of you all over the country have boys in the services who will now be called upon to go into action. You have friends and families in what has suddenly become a danger zone. You cannot escape anxiety. That means everybody is going to be worried and scared. You can try to hide from it, but it's impossible. We're all going to be touched by this conflict. You cannot escape a clutch of fear at your heart. And yet I hope that the certainty of what we have to meet will make you rise above these fears. Everyone's going to feel this. Everyone's going to be worried and scared. But Eleanor Roosevelt is saying, you need to rise above these fears. We're going to meet it. You know, this is a very American type speech. We rise to the challenge. We're not dictated by fear. How do we do that? That's what she says next. We must go about our daily business more determined than ever to do the ordinary things as well as we can. And when we find a way to do anything more in our communities to help others, to build morale, to give a feeling of security, we must do it. Whatever is asked of us, I am sure we can accomplish it. We are the free and unconquerable, it's a big word, people of the United States of America. To the young people of this nation, I must speak a word tonight. You're going to have a great opportunity. There will be high moments in which your strength and your ability will be tested. I have faith in you. I feel as though I was standing upon a rock, and that rock is my faith in my fellow citizens. Now we will go back to the program we had arranged. Okay, so this is the first public address to Americans following Pearl Harbor. And Eleanor Roosevelt is very understanding of the fears that everyone is probably feeling. But she's casting things as a test, right? She's explaining it that way. You're going to have a great opportunity. And the question is, will we rise to the challenge? And Eleanor Roosevelt says, absolutely. I have faith in you. You will make you rise above these fears. All right, so that's Eleanor Roosevelt's Pearl Harbor address.